I think there's a chance that you and I might be doing this together alone.
Okay. Did you send out a reminder right now?
I did.
Right now you did?
I sent it out 5 minutes ago.
Cool. I didn't get it yet.
It said it will be starting in 15 minutes.
Who'd you send it to?
To my list.
I didn't get it at the Club 182.
I haven't sent that out. I could.
Yeah.
I don't remember what the address is, do you?
members-182@toastmastersclubs.org.
No, sorry, I meant the URL of this Memory Palace webinar. Yeah, the page.
drclue.com/memory-palace-webinar. Are you? memory-palace-webinar /.
Cool.
Want me to repeat it?
I got it.
http://
W
no wwws.
Oh no.
drclue.com/memory-palace-webinar /.
Got it. Cool. It's already online. You may have to refresh.
There it is. Oh, it made me do my chat window again.
Oh no.
Yeah.
That's.
Oh, but then it came back.
Oh, okay.
I didn't know.
All right, I'm going to go ahead and open it up, I think.
Yep.
I think I'm going to try headphones. I think the quality will be better.
Okay.
Hello, everyone. This is Dave Blum with today's webinar on the Memory Palace. We'll be getting started at 7 o'clock.
I couldn't hear you at all. It might be user error.
How about now?
No, I can't hear anything. Try again.
Hello, everyone. This is Dave Blum with Dr. Clue. And we're going to be talking today about the Memory Palace. No?
No. No audio. Oh, wait.
I think it should be working.
Your browser does not currently recognize any of the video formats available.
Yeah, there we are.
Do I need to be on Google? Chrome?
What are you using?
Explorer?
That should work. Chrome probably works better.
I couldn't hear you at all.
Hopefully people are going to be able to hear me. Hopefully people are going to be able to hear me. 20-second delay. It's 2 minutes to 7. This is Dave Blum. Welcome, everyone. Hopefully you've figured out how to start this webinar. Press the play button and refresh if necessary. If you are having any trouble, I hope you will send a message in our chat box, our Chatango chat box. We're going to get started in about 2 minutes. Again, welcome to today's webinar on the Memory Palace. No more notes, memorizing speeches and presentations the fast, easy way. My name is Dave Blum, and I'm looking forward to sharing with you everything that I know and have learned as I've mastered this particular tool, this memory tool called the Memory Palace. We'll get started in just a minute. As you come in, I hope you will please sign into the Chatango box. It's a red chat box below. You just need to choose Anon, and then you hit go, and you can start entering. If you want to be a little bit less anonymous, you can hit set name again and choose a temporary name. It's a double process. Once you're all set up, please do introduce yourself in the chat area with your name and where you're listening from. It is now coming up on 7 o'clock. It is 7 o'clock, and we are going to begin today's webinar. Just want to give a quick note again. This is Dave Blum, facilitator, entrepreneur, certified life coach, speaker, and president of a team building company called Dr. Clue. I'm also president of Toastmasters Club 182, a Toastmasters local club in Santa Rosa, California. Just a quick heads up, there is a 20-second time gap between when I talk and you actually hear me. So I will try not to get ahead of myself as we go through today's webinar. And please do hold your questions until the end when I'll do a Q&A. Hello, Anner, or Ann in Santa Rosa. Welcome. So let's begin. It's September 10th, 2016, Santa Rosa, California, and I'm stepping onto the stage to deliver my first speech for my local Toastmasters club. I have practiced my speech 47 times via brute rote memorization. I'm as ready as I'm ever going to be. Everything starts out well. I nail the intro. Yes. I rip through my first point. Yes again. I tear through my second point. Okay. I am rounding the final turn and heading for the home stretch in this speech when it happens. Someone in the audience, their phone goes off, and I glare at them, and I scowl at them, and I turn my attention to the people in the audience. And then suddenly I realize what I never wanted to happen has happened. I realize I've forgotten where I am in the speech. I've forgotten my third point. I've forgotten my conclusion. I've forgotten everything. It's like my mind is an Etch-a-Sketch and someone just shook it up, leaving me with a blank slate. I try to picture my speech outline, but it's just words on a page. And in despair, I skip my third point, and I offer kind of a meek ending, and I slink off the stage. And as I walk back to my seat, I hear that old, ugly, mean voice in the back of my head, and it's saying, "Stupid, stupid Dave. You have a terrible memory. Who do you think you are, imagining you can be a public speaker? You'll never be able to do this. You might as well quit now and save yourself the embarrassment." Write yes in the chat box if you've ever had a similar experience. I almost quit my Toastmasters group that night. For you see, I've struggled my whole life with memory. I had the advantage or disadvantage of having a brother and a father who had excellent memories, superior memories, and I just wasn't one of them. I couldn't keep up with them. And I felt like all throughout my life, I was trying to work around this slippery memory, this memory that's like a sieve or like a colander. In daily life, it's not such a big deal. If you forget a couple of names at a cocktail party, you can just fake it. If you can't remember where your glasses are or your keys or your wallet, which happens to me all the time, I don't know if that's necessarily a memory problem as much as it just is being mindful and attentive. But still, there have been times when my fear that my memory is insufficient has held me back, There have been times where I've avoided certain opportunities, even certain careers, because I didn't have the memory. For example, I thought about journalism at one time, academia, and even law. Can you imagine trying to be a lawyer if your memory is insufficient? That's how I felt. Nevertheless, I'm stubborn. 2 weeks later, 2 weeks after this failed speech, I got up on the stage again to deliver my second speech. This time I practiced 57 times. And believe it or not, I spaced out again. A month later, after 67 repetitions, I tried my third speech, and you can guess what happened. Another space out, another forgetting moment. Oh boy. Now I was really ready to quit. But like I said, I'm stubborn. Figuring I couldn't be alone with this problem, I decided to consult a dear friend, Google, to see if there was a solution to my problem. And what I discovered astonished me. I'd been using a completely outdated memory process. Rote memorization is not only inefficient, it works against our brain's natural processes. You see, our brains were shaped in the caveman era. The caveman era. And back in the caveman era, 10,000 to 100,000 years ago, all that we thought about, or all that we concerned ourselves with, was places and images. Images and places. Because if you're a caveman or cavewoman, what are you really concerned with? Pretty much, where do you hunt? Where do you forage? How do you get from the hunting grounds back to your cave? Is this plant edible or poisonous? Places and images. That's how our brains were shaped. That is still how our brains are wired. It has not changed at all, and yet we live in an information age where we're supposed to know about passwords and names of people at parties and all of this vast amount of data, but our brains are still operating from places and images. The Greeks and the Romans, 2,000 years ago, understood this and developed a memory system that works with our caveman brain and not against it, turning abstract ideas into vivid places and images. They called it the memory palace. And that's what I'm going to share with you today, because as I mentioned before, it has a lot of meaning for me. I really have struggled my whole life to discover a method that actually allows me to memorize things in a way that is not painful, is really been to my advantage. Raise your hand, or actually type yes if you've ever heard of the memory palace. Just type yes in the chat box if you've ever heard of the memory palace. Hi, Kenny. Thanks for joining us. By the end of this session, you'll be able to create unforgettable mental images for each element of your speech. Create unforgettable mental images for every element of each of your speech. You'll be able to strategically place your images into a memory palace. Strategically place these images that you create into a memory palace. And deliver your next speech without any notes, dramatically increasing your credibility. And that's what this is all about, if you think about it. Because for some reason, we associate intelligence with memory and memory with intelligence. If we know somebody who is extremely bright, we assume that person has a great memory and vice versa. And when you see someone who's giving a speech and they're using no notes and they're doing it completely from memory, you respect them. You feel like they must be smarter than the average person. They must be more capable and more professional. And this is just the way that it works, because we have this equation that memory equals intelligence. Now, of course, we all probably know people who are extremely intelligent but don't have very good memories. Raise your hand if that is you, right? Please write yes if you consider yourself extremely intelligent with kind of a slippery memory. And of course, we know people who have excellent memories who aren't particularly intelligent, but that's not the point. The point is that there is an optic that this person who speaks well and without notes is an intelligent and more credible. So that's what we're going to try and do here, is increase your credibility. So what is a memory palace? That's really the crux of this. Well, here's how it works. First, in your mind, you choose a location that you know backwards and forwards. It could be your home, your current home or apartment. It could be your childhood home or apartment. It could be the route that you take from home to work. It could be an apartment you lived in or a dormitory, anywhere that you know very well, backwards and forwards. That is the best place to use as a source of your memory palace. And let's say it's your current home. The next thing you do is you turn the main points of your speech into extremely vivid images, almost 3D. Finally, you place these images inside rooms of your mental house so that during your speech, you are walking around your home, literally seeing your main speech points in your mind. It's like your speech points have come to life. It's a museum full of statues, and those statues are your speech. And you walk around them, looking at them, experiencing, noticing them, and it's very difficult to forget because it's suddenly become 3D in a way that your mind responds to, because your mind doesn't respond to words on a page. Let's show this in action. Let's say that the first point in your speech is the word anticipation. And you're going to give a number of subpoints about the concept of anticipation and what it is and how it works. And we're going to tie this to part of your house, the door. So you want to tie the word anticipation to the word door. And it's a little bit of an abstract term. It's words on a page. You're just looking at it right now, and it looks like a word on a page. And that's not very easy to remember. And maybe you're thinking the shape of the word. It goes up high and it goes down low below the P, but that's not the best way to memorize. We're going to turn this into a vivid image. And I think the best way is to break it into syllables. We have anticipation. I think I only really need the ant and the sip because the rest of it I can get. So here's an image I invite you to enjoy. We have a very large, beautiful ant, not like your Aunt Martha, but an actual ant, like an insect. And this ant is about 6 feet tall, is wearing a pink negligee, and is very beautiful with many shapely curves because it's an ant. She is waiting at the door in her pink nightgown. The door is green, and she is waiting for her husband to come home for a night of amour, of love. But she's feeling some nervousness, so she is drinking champagne from a series of champagne glasses. She has many hands and arms because she's an ant, she's an insect, so she has about 8. So she has a glass of champagne, and another glass of champagne, and another glass of champagne up high, and another one down low, and another one to the left, and another one to the right. All around, she is anticipating the arrival of her husband, drinking champagne. But because she's an ant, she's not terribly coordinated. She spills the champagne on herself. One after another, after another, and after another, all the glasses get spilled onto herself. She falls on the ground, slips, and is tangled up in a giant pretzel, a giant octopus, tentacles of arms and legs and champagne glasses, and that's how the story ends. I would challenge you, an hour after the speech, to forget that image. It's kind of a crazy image, but it will help you to remember anticipation, and it ties it to the door. Wow. So what made this image memorable? That's a good question. And to do that, we have to explore what makes images in general memorable. Images they need to appeal to the senses, particularly the visual if you're a visual person, but they can also be kinesthetic. If you're a kinesthetic person, you might want to create an image that has a lot of action. If you're someone who is more drawn towards smell, then you want to add smell to your image. Use the senses. Definitely want to have action, and sometimes that action might even be a little bit violent. It should be funny. It should be bizarre, like we created just now, and it can be a little bit sexy. So if you can add, I don't know, Beyonce or Supermodel or Channing Tatum or Zac Efron, that image will become even more memorable in your caveman brain. Okay, let's try another one. It's your turn on this one. Let's say you're trying to remember the word cooperation, and we're going to tie it to a couch. We're going to tie it to a couch so that when you in your mind look at your couch, you think of the word cooperation, and you imagine a vivid image. So we've got the word cooperation. I would, if I were doing this, break it into syllables. And it could be co and then operation, and you could do something with that. Or it could be coop, like a chicken coop, and then ration. I don't know. But I want to give you guys an opportunity on this for our esteemed listeners. If you can think of a quick image, please type it in your chat box. A creative image of cooperation and couch that uses senses, action, funny, bizarre, sexy. I'll give you a minute for this. I'm counting on you, Donica. I think you've got this image in you. And that's me right here. Another vivid image. Donica writes, chickens in a smelly coop and army soldiers eating rations. Yes, indeed. Sitting on the couch. I love it. Thank you, Donica. That's great. That's exactly the type of thing you want to do. Again, senses, kinesthetic action, funny, bizarre, sexy. Make it really vivid. Are you getting a better idea of how to construct these memorable images that are going to go into your memory palace? Oh, wait, it continues. 2 operations going on at the same time. Thank you, Danica. Awesome. Co-operations. I like it. All right. You can continue writing them out. But let's start putting these images into the memory palace, because that's the point. That's why we're here. Let me give you an example of how this works. Let's say that we were going to be giving a speech on how seniors can thrive during their retirement. How seniors can thrive during their retirement. And your main points are: get a pet, work your brain, and find a meaningful hobby. Now, because I didn't write this down, the visual learners are already, what was that again? What was the first one and the second one? Some of you probably could remember it easily, but if it were me and I wasn't taking notes, I would already have forgotten these points. And that's the whole point, is that it's difficult to remember words, especially if you've got a whole sentence or a longer phrase. So the points again were: get a pet, work your brain, and find a meaningful hobby. Now, what we're going to do is we're going to take these 3 concepts, we are going to turn them into images and put them in this mental house that I'm going to describe. And the way it's going to go is the first point, get a pet, is going to go into the first room, which is the office. You're actually going to put this pet in the doorway of your office. The second point, which was work your brain, we're going to put the brain in the doorway of another room, which is the living room. And for the third point, which is to find a meaningful hobby, we're going to put a hobby horse in the doorway of your kitchen. So you got that? Pet goes in the doorway of your office, brain goes in the doorway of your living room, hobby goes in the doorway of your kitchen. Let me show you what this looks like. Pet in the office, brain in the living room, hobby horse in the kitchen. What we want to do is put a vivid image of each of these different objects, things, into the various rooms. So we want to create a vivid image of a pet in the doorway of your office, and a vivid, extremely vivid image of a brain in some way in living room, and again, a very vivid image of a hobby horse in the kitchen. Would anybody like to give a shot at the pet in the doorway? What kind of pet would be in the doorway of the office, and what would it be doing, and any details that you can add to make it extremely vivid so that when you think about your house, you see that pet in the doorway of the office. Let me give you a minute to write something in the chat box. Don says, my family St. Bernard is sitting there drooling. That drooling makes it vivid. If it was just sitting there, it would just be a dog. But the fact that it's drooling, and maybe I might even suggest take it an extra step further. What happens to the drool? Does it pool up into a big pool? Is it made of acid? Does it shoot all over the place? Does it knock anything over? That extra action is what really brings this alive. Ah, yes, his brain is in the living room. Thank you, Don. I see that his brain is lifting weights. I like that too. There's a dachshund chewing on the door. Fantastic. Great. Anything that you can do. And if you can make it funnier or strange, the better. And we would do the same thing with the brain in the living room. We would do the same thing with the hobby horse in the kitchen. Make them vivid, action, adding details, and so on. Now we need to get to the subpoints. So if you've got this pet in the office, obviously that is your main point. Seniors should have pets. And now we want to expand it so that we can remember the subpoints, because the main point of this is pet in the office, but there are subpoints as you would support any main point. Why should seniors have a pet? Well, let me give you a few reasons. Number one, pets provide companionship. Number two, they provide a break from routine. Three, they provide exercise. Could be a number of things. Four, they provide a stress release, and so on. So what I've put here in this slide are 3 landmarks in my office. On the left, you see a ladder. It's a little step ladder. In the center is what I call a kitty condo. It's one of those climbing structures for cats, carpeted for easy access. And then to the right is an inflatable palm tree. These are 3 landmarks in my office. We're going to tie the subpoints to each of these images in a very vivid way. The first point is pets provide companionship. And there's the ladder. So companionship is a hard thing to put together. I broke it into syllables. So take a look at that ladder and imagine at the top of the ladder is a giant comma. It's kind of like a punctuation mark, a giant comma. And it's sitting at the top of the ladder. And on the second rung is a frying pan. Let's call it one of those big Chinese woks. And it's got scalding, bubbling oil. And it's sitting on the second rung of the ladder. And down beneath that, on the final rung, is a wooden ship. It's a wooden pirate ship. And all of these are sitting on this ladder. And you see how this works? A comma, a pan, and a ship. Companionship. I just broke it up into 3 images, but we got to connect them in some vivid way. So the comma has arms and legs, and it slips off the top of the ladder and falls into the frying pan full of boiling oil. And it scalds it, and it gets so agitated that it tips the frying pan, and the boiling oil drips down into the wooden ship, which bursts into flame. And the pirates jump off of the ship screaming, "Arr, arr, arr." And that's what happens. Companionship is broken into 3 vivid images. They're all connected. It's connected to this ladder. And when I look at that ladder and I just think about it, I can see the 3 images and I can remember the word companionship. Now, you may not need it. You might have been okay with just having a comma. But there are times when your brain is just slippery and you just need to break it down. So that's the first one. The ladder is companionship. The second one is the kitty condo. And we're going to say that one is exercise. That getting a pet is a great thing for seniors to get exercise. I'm imagining that my cat is on that kitty structure wearing red and yellow spandex. And she is doing jumping jacks on the kitty condo. Let's have her doing it on the middle of the kitty condo. And she is so heavy, she's a 20-pound Maine Coon, that the whole thing collapses and falls to the ground. And she goes flying, does a triple somersault, sticks the landing, and goes, ta-da! And she says, meow. How about that? When I look at that kitty condo, I'm thinking exercise, because I'm thinking of my exercising cat in all of those vivid ways. The third one is the inflatable palm tree. And the main point that we're going to tie, or the sub-point we're going to tie with that, is that pets provide stress release. Stress release. So what do you do with a palm tree? Well, palm trees are huge. How about a giant? And a giant is squeezing that palm tree so hard to release stress that coconuts go flying all over the room, and one of them smacks him in the face, and he gets a bloody nose, and it gushes all the way down to the ground and creates a giant stream of blood. I will never forget that image. I hope you see how this is working. For each of the subpoints, I turn them into images connected to a landmark. And then as I walk the room in my mind, I encounter these landmarks. I see the image in my mind, and I remember the image, and hence I remember my speech point. And it's so vivid that I could go backwards and forwards. What's the third point? Well, it was the palm tree. Oh yeah, stress release. What was the next point? Oh yes, it was something about the kitty condo. Yes, exercise. And it was something else. The next point was something about the ladder. Oh yeah, there were 3 things on that ladder, and they were comma. Okay, companionship. All that you have to do is use landmarks and connect them to images, and you'll never forget them. And as you leave the office, you know you have finished the 3 subpoints of this main point, pet, and you can go on to the next point, which is the next room. So let's have you try this for one quick second. Let's say that you are going to do the next point. And we're going to skip, I'm going to go back a second here. If you remember, we had the pet in the office, the brain, as in brain work, in the living room, and the hobby horse in the kitchen. Let's skip her to the kitchen. And I'd like you guys to think of an image that will connect, not the hobby horse, but the first point about having a hobby. The main point is that it's great to have a hobby. If you're a senior, it will help you to enjoy your retirement. The first sub point on this is the past. The past. If you're trying to figure out what your hobby is as a senior, it's best to look to the past. Look to your childhood. If you look to your past, you look to the childhood, you will be well along the way to creating an excellent hobby in your senior years. Let's connect the past with a refrigerator. The past with a refrigerator. I'm not sure if that's how you spell refrigerator. There might be a D in there. The past and the refrigerator. So again, in the chat box, if you would, see if you can create an image of the past and the refrigerator that uses all of the tools of creating a vivid image. I'll give you a minute. I'll pop back over to me for a moment. I see Anon8742 said, the past, the leftovers from last night, chili. Great. Excellent. I would maybe suggest you add a little bit more detail, what color it is, what it smells like, and also have it do something crazy. Maybe it explodes all over the kitchen. Violence is great for memorizing. Donica says, my cousins and I used to make Rice Krispie treats and then lay in the box freezer watching Godzilla movies. Wow, that's pretty good. Terrific. I can just imagine it. That has a lot of detail. Terrific. Ken, I hope you see how this is working. So let's just review for a moment how this works. You create an image in your mind. You take your main points and put them in their own individual rooms, either in the room or in the doorway. And then your subpoints are landmarks in each room. Landmarks in each room connected to images. You're turning everything into 3D images and connecting them. Then when you're giving your speech, a part of your attention is in your house. And you walk through each room, noticing the landmarks, remembering your points very vividly if you've constructed them carefully. As you move to each room, you know you're at a new point, and then you go on and on, hitting these various points in a very, very visual way that appeals to your caveman brain. Now, what about transitions? This is a good point. Sometimes you have a transition from one point to the next. Write yes in your chat box if you ever struggle with transitions when writing a speech. I would expect almost everyone. Well, a transition can be put anywhere. I like to put them in the hallway because obviously what connects a room to another room is a hallway. So let's say, for example, earlier in my speech, I said, I don't know if you remember this, I said, figuring I wasn't alone, I consulted the Google. Yeah, transitions are where most people get lost. I said earlier, figuring I wasn't alone, I consulted the Google. That was my transition to get from one point to the next. I consulted my dear friend, my best friend, Google. Terrific. So if I were trying to put figuring, and I wanted to remember that transition, which I wrote out in my speech, but now I want to remember it, I would just put it in the hallway, and there's a lot of ways you could do that. Figuring could be a giant fig dressed in boxing trunks, which is punching holes in the wall of the hallway. Or if you like, it could be the figure of something, the figure of a supermodel, the figure of Zac Efron or George Clooney or whoever it is that you enjoy looking at. And it's giving you come hither looks. So that's how you do transitions. The detail of your speech can go in. If you have a good memory, you may only need the main points and the subpoints to remember your speech and to keep you on track. But when you write out your speech, if you have a lot of really great turns of phrases, you can put them all in your memory palace. You can just create more detail. You can put anything in there that you really want to make sure you don't forget. You could put an entire quote into your memory palace, and you could break it down. For example, the famous speech by Martin Luther King, "I have a dream that one day our nation will rise up and live out the true meaning of its creed." You could break that entire quote into 3 or 4 chunks, create an image for each chunk, stick it in a room, connect it to objects, and then you will remember that quote. And you may not even need the images after a little while. It will just come to you. But initially, it's nice to know that if you get stuck, you just walk into, in my case, I have that in my TV room. I walk into my TV room, I look in the closet, and I see dream. I have a really nice image of someone sleeping in a certain part of the TV room. And then I have another for nation. That nation is a giant nation, American nation puzzle, jigsaw puzzle, and it's sitting inside of a cat carrier, and so on and so on. You can put any level of detail you want into your memory palace, or you can just use main points. It doesn't matter. But that's how you do it. That's exactly how it works. At this point, I wanted to ask if anyone has any questions. So we'll have a little bit of a question and answer period. Feel free. There was a question, how many? Now this is up to you. I'm not exactly sure what you mean by that. However, sometimes you probably mean something like, yeah, that's okay. How many rooms? And this is a good question. I think if you had 5 rooms, and bathrooms are perfectly great rooms, you could probably have almost any speech completely nailed. 1 room for the intro, 1 room for the first point, 1 room for the second point, 1 room for the third point, 1 room for the conclusion. You've got 5 rooms, and if you don't have that big a place, again, the bathroom will work fine. You can also cram them into 1 room. Sometimes when I'm using my kitchen, I will use all the shelves in my refrigerator. I will use the cutting boards, the sink, the knives, plants on the table, the place where my cat gets her food. There are 4 burners on my stove, so we can use all 4 of the burners on the stove for images. We can use the toaster, the pantry. I might have 10 or 12 or 14 images in my kitchen alone, which could be 2 points. Maybe I have 2 main points all in the kitchen because I have a small apartment. Doesn't really matter. The question was, do you go up and down the stairs? That's up to you. Sometimes, if you need it, you can put anything anywhere in your room. The point is, you just are going to be able to walk through it in your mind, part of your attention. And then if you get lost in your speech, oh gosh, I can't think of anything. You just say, well, where was I in my house? I was in the bedroom. I was looking in the closet. What's there? And if you close your eyes for a moment, you will remember that image that was there. And then hopefully, if you've done it carefully, you'll remember what point it was actually referring to. And again, this is just something, as you practice your speech, the image will come back to you. You may have to remind yourself again, but eventually you'll have it down set, and then you don't have to worry. This is the best part of it. You don't have to worry anymore. You know that the whole thing is laid out in your house. You just take a walk. When I'm giving a speech, if I've done my job right with the memory palace, I don't have to worry about outlines or words or anything. It's all in the house. When I start my speech, I just step into the house and start walking around. I'll see all my speech points. And when I'm done, I'll leave the house. And I know it's there. And it'll be there a month from now because images stick in your mind much more than words. 2 months from now, I'll be able to remember that speech by just quickly reviewing my memory palace. How many people can say they can do that just by memorizing an outline? I like the idea of going ups and down stairs too. So you can really put anything in there. And one of the questions that often comes up is, how long does this take? More importantly, what if I'm not a creative person? And of course, we're all creative. It does get easier. When I first started this, it's like, oh man, creating images, that's hard work. Well, it's easier than rote memorization, I believe. But if you spend the time, I can now do a memory palace in about an hour. I can do an entire speech as a memory palace in about an hour. And I'll write out the various landmarks. I'll quickly write out the main points. I'll create some images. I'll stick it in there. I'll review it in my mind a couple of times. As I'm giving my speech, I might consult my memory palace sheet because I like to write it out. After 2 or 3 times, I remember all the images, all the crazy stories, and it's in there. And then I only have to practice it for presentation, for speechcraft, for effect. I'm not as worried about memorizing, so I get to actually worry about connecting with my audience because the speech is there. And if I get stuck, all I have to do is close my eyes and think of these crazy images, and they'll come to me. They always do, much more so than words on a page. Are there any other questions before we wrap this up? Question was, any suggestions on developing images? It's really up to you. Have some fun with it. I do think that it's easier for abstract terms to break things down into syllables, and then you just have fun. You just let your imagination go wild. Smile about it. You're being creative. You're not just memorizing a speech, which is torture. You're creating fun images. If you need to write it out, you could actually draw whatever it is, but just have some fun. You know, if something looks like a cat, have some fun. But remember to give it that extra twist. That's the important thing that makes it memorable. That extra sexy twist, that extra violent twist. You don't have to share your images with anyone, so you can go to town. It's all private. It's all for your memory. So enjoy it. Be stimulated by it if you like. But that's what I would do when thinking about images. Just see what comes to mind and give it an extra twist. Someone wrote that they felt they would like to see what my memory sheet looks like for a speech, and is there any difference if you're using PowerPoint along with your presentations. I hope you noticed that in this particular speech, I tried not to give too many actual images because I wanted you to create your own images. My images would, they would supplant your own images, and then you wouldn't be memorable. It doesn't serve me at all to show you. As far as my memory palace speech sheet, what I'll do is I'll actually write out landmarks in my house. I'll just write down each room. I'll write down 5 or 10 landmarks. Great. I'll just go boom, 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 boom. Here are the landmarks. And then in another column, I'll write down my speech points, and then I'll just start connecting them. I'll first chunk it, of course. I'll say, okay, my speech has 3 points. So this first point is connected to this room. Here are the landmarks in the room. Here are the subpoints. Let's try and mix and match them. And then I'll do the same thing. I'll write down the landmarks on one side of the sheet. On the other side of the sheet, I'll write down the subject and the main points and the subpoints. And then I'll just start connecting images. And it doesn't take too long. And sometimes I have to stop and take a break because my brain hurts. But I come back to it. Even if it takes me an hour, hour and a half to do this, how much faster than rote memorization and having to practice your speech 47 times? Are there any differences in using PowerPoint? I don't really think so. In fact, the problem with PowerPoint is we have a tendency to use it as a memory tool. People will take their PowerPoint, they'll look at the PowerPoint sheet and say, there's my notes, and if I just look at the PowerPoint, it'll help me to remember my speech, and I can read my notes on the PowerPoint speech. And then you've taken your attention away from the audience where it should be, and you're now looking at the PowerPoint. And I think that that's absolutely wrong. I think that you should absolutely have it so memorized and so in a memory palace that you don't ever look at your PowerPoint at all. It's just happening behind you. Maybe even somebody else is operating it. So you're focused on eye contact, on gesture, on movement, on all the things that you want to be doing, on saying, getting audience participation. You can't do that when you're looking at your presentation. I'm going to go ahead and wrap this up. I wanted to make this about 40 or 45 minutes. If you have any other questions, feel free to ask in the chat box. If you have any other questions, would like to contact me, you can do that. Let me give you a little quick summary. Let's wrap this up. The Memory Palace. It's a way of transforming your main points into vivid images. It's a way to place each main point image into a separate room, turn each subpoint into an image and attach it to a landmark in the appropriate room. And then during your speech, you walk each room in your mind, making a note of each landmark image as you pass them by, as if you were in the Louvre Museum looking at Michelangelo statues. If there aren't too many in the Louvre. Some final thoughts then. My goal today was for you to feel more at home with memorizing speeches by putting your speeches in your home. Mark Twain once said there are two types of speakers, the nervous and the liars. And speeches are nerve-wracking for everyone. Of course they are. They just are. It's an unnatural experience. When you stand in front in a speech, it's going to be stressful because it's been proven that human beings get stressed when they're amongst strangers. That's why we want to turn people into friends as quickly as possible so we can feel less stress. So giving a speech is always a stressful experience. But the good news is it doesn't have to be agony. It doesn't have to be painful. Memory is just a muscle like any other muscle. It's not genetic. It's something that you can work on. It's something that you can get stronger at. I challenge you all, not just to learn the Memory Palace, but to teach it to someone else. Because when you teach something, you learn it twice. Teach it to someone else who you think you know that someone you know who needs to look good in their presentations. Because if somebody else looks good in their presentation, you'll look good as well. I hope you enjoyed this webinar. I would like to just ask you who you know in your organization who needs to look great during their speeches, but maybe isn't. Senior leaders, sales managers, or yourself. And this is something that I speak on. I have a 45-minute keynote speech on the Memory Palace. I also have a 90-minute workshop where we really get in depth in creating memory palaces. People actually perform them. My number is here, my email as well. It was a pleasure speaking with you, and I hope you enjoyed. Good luck, Anon8742. If you have any questions, drop me a line. Great job, everyone. If you have any more questions, I can stay here for a few more. Otherwise, take it offline and feel free to send me your questions. I will be repeating this webinar on Thursday morning. If you know anyone who would benefit from this, please have them come at 10 a.m. Pacific time at the same URL where we will be doing it once more with gusto. All right. Thank you so much, everyone. Bye-bye.